So in this latest conflict point in Jammu and Kashmir, joining me now is Jammu and Kashmir National Conference leader, former Chief Minister Omar Abdullah joins me. Appreciate your joining us, Omar Abdullah. This latest, in a way, tug of war between the centre and the state, with the Election Commission caught in the middle, suggests that you in Jammu and Kashmir do not trust the Election Commission when it insists that we are not bringing in non-locals into the voter list. But you seem convinced that there is an attempt being made to change the demography of Jammu and Kashmir before any future election is held.
Well, we are going purely by what the State Election Commission has said, where they have said that they expect 25 lakh new voters to be registered, and they are giving voter rights to everybody who is ordinarily resident in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, this doesn't mean they are state subjects. It doesn't even mean the new domicile. They are saying that it is ordinarily resident, leaving the term extremely vague. What is ordinarily resident? Do you have to at least be occupying a house, a property here? Does it mean you could be living under a flyover and claim the right to vote? What of the hundreds of thousands of security forces that are deployed in Jammu and Kashmir? Will they be treated as ordinary residents? Will they and their families be given votes? See, these are things that are not being clarified. And where did this 25 lakh number come from? Because registration hasn't started yet. So on what basis have they assumed that they will be bringing in 25 lakh new voters, unless it is something that's already been thought about and planned? I mean, these are questions.
The Election Commission says, though, Omar Abdullah, is that you are seeing conspiracies where none exist. They claim that these new electoral rolls are being done based on a lot of young voters coming in. That it doesn't mean that you are encouraging non-locals to enter the Kashmir Valley ahead of whenever elections take place there.
But
that
again,
the Kashmir parties have not gone through the fine print before you've already accused in a way the EC of a conspiracy.
We went purely by what the State Election Commission is telling us. They've given a number of 25 lakhs. Now, I am willing to come forward to discuss these younger voters. Absolutely, there will be new voters that will be added to the electoral rolls. But let's not forget, it's hardly been 2 or 3 years since we had the block development elections and the district development council elections. Are you telling me between that election and this election, you're adding 25 lakh new young voters to the electoral rolls? I refuse to believe that our population has grown suddenly, that in less than 3 years, 25 lakh youngsters are going to be registered as new voters.
This 25 lakh figure, of course, will remain contentious until there is a complete clarification on that. But in the meantime, that term that you mentioned, ordinarily resident, now that could be in any other part of the country. If I'm ordinarily resident, I can vote in that part of the country. If tomorrow the Election Commission says and clarifies that the armed forces posted in Jammu and Kashmir can register as voters and participate in a way in the assembly polls, you will object to that presumably, because you seem to see that as a conspiracy.
Because no, Rajdeep, I'm sorry, you cannot compare Jammu and Kashmir to other parts of the country. Jammu and Kashmir, the entire Jammu and Kashmir is under the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. We are a disturbed area. You can't treat us like a peace station. We have more than 700,000 security forces deployed here because this is an unsafe place, because the Armed Forces Special Powers Act applies here, because this is a disturbed area. You can't compare us to another cantonment town and say that because army can vote here, they can vote there. There the numbers will be in the thousands or maximum 10,000. Here we're talking about lakhs. You're talking about 600,000, 700,000 troops over and above the 25 lakh that the Election Commission talked about. So yes, this will be hugely problematic. Please clarify. Are the armed forces entitled to vote in a disturbed area? Or does the presence of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, does the application of the Disturbed Areas Act to Jammu and Kashmir, does it preclude the armed forces and the security forces from voting here? These are things the Election Commission needs to clarify, because otherwise, I mean, you can't blame us for seeing a conspiracy, because we've been lied to for all these years. Don't forget.
But all these years.
One sec.
Yes.
Let me finish. No lesser person than the then occupant of Raj Bhavan lied to the people in the run-up to August 2019 to say that no changes were in the offing, there would be no change to the status of Jammu and Kashmir, and that everything would remain as it was. We shouldn't believe the rumors. And we know what happened on the 5th of August. So please don't tell me that we are seeing conspiracies where none exist, because we have been lied to time and again, and it is very difficult to trust what we hear now.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned August 5th, 2019, because it seems from that moment till today, the trust deficit between Delhi and Srinagar has only widened. Today, you seem to express the concerns that the Election Commission's moves will open the floodgates and turn locals into an electoral minority. Is this simply, at the end of the day, about this gaping trust deficit that post-August 15, August 5, 2019, and the effective abrogation of Article 370, Srinagar and Delhi are on a collision course, and there is a widening trust deficit? That's what it boils down to.
Well, I won't use the word collision course, because we're not looking for a fight with New Delhi. We are trying, I mean, every time we are asked to step up, we step up to reduce this trust deficit, whether it is in meetings with the central government, or more recently when the Lieutenant Governor suddenly, with hardly a couple of hours notice, decided to invite political parties over a cup of tea to discuss the Amarnath Yatra. We went as responsible political parties and participated in it. But you will excuse us if we feel that not enough is being done to open channels of communication and to address trust deficits. Look, you can't put trucks outside our house and lock us in our homes one day and then expect us to be completely sort of free from suspicion and fear the very next day. We have been, Jammu and Kashmir has been treated badly. Jammu and Kashmir has been lied to. Jammu and Kashmir has been misled. And yes, there is a trust deficit, and that trust deficit needs to be addressed. I mean,
you know, but the concerns that many will have is that while this trust deficit, as you call it, exists, as we've seen, non-locals are have been targeted by terror groups in recent times, and that's the fear, that while political parties also talk about locals versus non-locals, that the elections must be limited to locals, look what's happening on the ground. Non-locals are becoming increasingly susceptible, along with Kashmiri Pandits, to targeted killings. Now, surely that is where the regional parties of the Kashmir Valley also need to stand up to be counted.
You know, Rajdeep, I wasn't going to say this because this was a conversation between the National Conference President and the Lieutenant Governor. But I think this is an appropriate time to say it. You know, 4 days ago, when a Kashmiri Pandit man was shot and killed in Shupaiya and his brother was injured, that very same day, my father picked up the phone and spoke to the Lieutenant Governor and said, look, please, call us all for a meeting. This is not just your fight. This is our common fight. We don't want to see minorities and outsiders targeted like this. Let's not give this impression that this is the government versus everybody. We want to come there and add our voice to yours. Please call us so that all of us can stand together with you and make this appeal that non-locals should not be targeted, non-locals should not be shot and killed this way. And we want to tell everybody that this is our common fight. It's not a fight of the government versus the militants. We all want to put our voice together with yours to put an end to these killings. That day and this day, nothing has happened. That offer that was made was not taken up, and that offer was made from our side. It wasn't as if somebody called us and said, do this. It was suo moto, my father's. He said that we have a responsibility as being part of the majority community to make the minority communities feel safe. So he reached out to the Lieutenant Governor and offered this meeting, and nothing was done about it. So again, yes, if there is a trust deficit, if there is a breakdown in communication, we are not solely responsible for it.
No, you want them to feel safe. You want non-locals to feel safe. You don't want this majority-minority gap to widen in the valley. And yet, when it comes to electoral rolls, you've already raised a red flag, saying you fear that the valley will be overwhelmed. My point again is, this is surely a time for healing touch at various levels. And this is a time for communication, not for each side throwing red flags at each other.
We have every right to ask questions, Rajdeep. We didn't ask the Election Commission to come forward with this statement. They came of their own accord and bandied about this 25 lakh number. And you yourself said, yes, this 25 lakh number needs to be talked about. So what is wrong when we ask questions about it? We have a right to ask, where did they get this 25 lakh number from? What will happen to the hundreds of thousands of security forces deployed here? Will the presence of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act preclude them from voting? These are legitimate questions, and they're all linked to what happened on 5th August 2019. Look, not so long ago, before the Supreme Court broke for the summer vacation, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court said that as soon as the summer break is over, he will constitute the bench to begin hearings on what happened on the 5th August 2019. That summer break ended a long time ago. Where is that bench?
Let me therefore ask you a final question. Given what you're saying is this gaping trust deficit, will you, your party and other valley-based parties in particular participate in the assembly elections that are held as and when they are held under the revised electoral rules, yes or no?
Well, I have always said that as far I can only speak for my party. I will not speak for any of the other participants in today's meeting or for any other party in Jammu and Kashmir. I would not support National Conference staying out of the electoral arena. I believe that whatever we can achieve through participating in these elections, but we will not stop asking questions about the doubts that we have and the fears that people have with regard to what is being projected or proposed.
Okay. On that note, Omar Abdullah, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Thanks very much.